Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jack Slack. This is the newly named Fights Gone By podcast. And I say ladies and gentlemen, but according to YouTube, you are overwhelmingly gentlemen. 94% of you are gentlemen. So, a bit of a sausage fest in the Jack Slack fan club. But at any rate, we've got some fights to discuss, we've got some listener/reader mail to do, and hopefully we'll have an enjoyable hour or 30 minutes or whenever I run out of steam. But before we get into it, just a little bit about my vision with this podcast and how we're going to sustain it. So most of you know that for the last 5 years or so, I've been working for fairly big companies. Bloody Elbow is owned by Vox. Bleacher Report is owned by someone. Fightland is obviously owned by Vice. I've never actually had a problem with being allowed to write whatever I want. But I suppose that's the nature of my work rather than if I were writing news pieces or something like that. At any rate, I want this show to be independent, and I'd quite like it to stay independent. Haven't talked to any sponsors. If I were going to take a sponsor, I'd probably take something that someone that I buy all their stuff anyway, and then I wouldn't have to buy it next time, maybe, like Scramble. Jack Slack, haul for freebies. But the way that I'm hoping to run this is that we're going to keep a Patreon open. You don't have to pay. I'm not going to beg you or whatever. But if you do want to subscribe, people who pay $5 a month, I kept it down low because I want to make this accessible to everyone. Anyone who donates $5 a month is going to be given an extra episode every month, which will be a historical episode talking about one of fighting's great rivalries or great fights. And that'll be more in sort of the style of hardcore history. I'll be doing my best Dan Carlin impression, but those will be more like, I suppose, almost like lectures, research, show notes and all those sort of things. It's just something I quite like to do, and I figured, people who are going to subscribe to me are the sort of people who'd enjoy that anyway. No point putting it out there for everyone else who doesn't care. Yeah, so go to Patreon, give me all your money, and then come back and listen to the rest of the podcast. Let's get into it. So, what did we all make of Fight Night? Fight Night Altitude. I don't know why the UFC keeps booking these cards at elevation, and especially putting heavyweights on them. That's just the worst idea. Everyone comes out looking much worse than they are because they, gas out at the end of the first round, and then it's just 2 more rounds of mouth breathing, generally. And I don't blame that on the fighters at all. I mean, obviously, if you're from an area where you are going to be training at elevation naturally, like Albuquerque, all the guys from Jackson's gym, they're probably pretty good at altitude. And what's called the Pit Elevated, they're up there in the altitude. Elevation, altitude, whichever one's correct. I'll use them interchangeably, and then I could be wrong just 50% of the time. But that was pretty much the order of things for this event, and I'm struggling to think of an event at, in a city at a tremendous elevation, where it would make a difference, and that everyone really enjoyed. Someone said UFC 135, but more recently I'm thinking things like the Mexico cards, Mexico City, where they built the whole event around Cain Velasquez, and then he didn't turn up early enough to acclimatise, and then he gassed out, him and Verdum swinging clumsily at each other for 2 rounds. So yeah, bit of a stinker in terms of overall feel at the event. There were some good fights on it, and I don't want to take anything away from the fighters who were good on that card. In fact, I don't want to take anything away from the fighters who weren't good on that card, because it's a very tough position to be put in. We'll start with the main event, because that's the one that's pretty divisive. It's pretty much the Will Ospreay versus Ricochet of the MMA world at this point. It's how much do you like jumping around, basically. But of course, in pro wrestling, you can sell the strikes. In mixed martial arts, we can see them missing. It was for about 2 rounds, I really enjoyed it. And then I realised, hold on, these lads aren't really getting anything done. And they're not committing to a long-term strategy. What they're doing is everything's got to be try and take the guy's head off with a weird spin. And that stops working very, very quickly. If a spinning attack is not placed within the context of a wider game, it just doesn't work. Because what you're doing is you're trying to be unpredictable all the time, and the only effect of being unpredictable all the time is that people go, okay, well, I want nothing to do with you. And as soon as you start turning your back or anything like that, they're going to back up. And there's not a single technique that you can name that isn't killed by distance. I mean, we can talk about not backing up in a straight line, because if you double jab, or if you feint someone out and follow them, you can catch them. But if you just start spinning and then the other guy retreats rapidly, you're not going to do anything, So that was just overwhelmingly what I thought while watching Yair Rodriguez. There's an awful lot of flack that he's catching this morning because of it, and some of it's deserved, obviously, because he threw 350 strikes, I think it was, and he connected about 33%, which is just not very good, generally. But he did get into the 5th round, and he was still throwing that stuff, he's still throwing at that rate. So a lot of people are now on the, Yair Rodriguez, he's not the world beater that was advertised, bandwagon. But who thought that the 23-year-old lad with the 5-fight MMA career, or whatever it is now, who thought that guy was going to be straight to the top? That's not how it works. In many respects, I think that he could probably still make something very good of himself. What I saw from him was a ton of cardio, a willingness to try all sorts of crazy stuff, a fearlessness, and if you put some common sense onto that and got him back to the fundamentals, because he must be practicing the fundamentals in the gym every day. We see all the footage of him hitting the pads and stuff. He knows how to do it. He just needs to build his spinning shit, as Nick Diaz would say, onto that stuff. What I think of when I think of Yair Rodriguez's performance last night is Max Holloway. Obviously, right now, Max Holloway is, he's so hot right now. But back in the day, I was watching him against Bermudez or someone like that, and I used to tweet out, I wonder which Max Holloway will show up tonight, the one that can box really well, or the one that likes throwing flying knees and giving up position and just making a mess of the fight. And gladly, that Max Holloway he hasn't been removed, because that's Max Holloway's personality. And we were talking about Lando Venata this week at Fightland, and I was saying that a fighter who can bring their personality through in their fighting is a very valuable commodity. It's very hard to be a good fighter and have a lot of yourself in the fight. Cub Swanson's another one, actually. People were complaining about how vanilla his personality is now that they gave him a mini-series sort of YouTube thing with, what's his name, Ishihara? And people were complaining about Cub Swanson's personality, but that's not at all what comes through in the cage. When you see Cub Swanson in the cage, you're getting Cub Swanson's personality, in strikes and grappling. But what Max Holloway did, which was so important, is that he put that back. That's behind his effective jab, his beautiful kicks. He jabs and then goes to the body with the same hand. Oh, love that. That's just, that's clotted cream on a scone for me. That's delicious. But Max Holloway will still do those things, like the last 10 seconds against Ricardo Lamas, where he was like, let's fight, and they swung for the fences. And people love that stuff. That's Max Holloway coming through in a fight, but without him having to do that for 3 to 5 rounds. Alex Caceres obviously was put off a lot by the spinning attacks. He didn't get an awful lot going, but then Caceres has a real problem with systematic, automatic, hydromatic. No, what am I looking for? The word methodical striking is what Alex Caceres has trouble with. He can hit quite hard, he's hit guys like Cole Miller very hard in the face, and he can throw the spinning stuff, and he can kick well. It's just that he doesn't really build it all together. He's just like Yair. It's I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work. Now I'll try something completely different. And he, then he doesn't return to the original thing at all. Alex Caceres especially has a build that it's tremendous. Like, he's such a long guy at featherweight. He even got down to bantamweight, so he's a very long guy. And if you taught him to strike like that, and obviously that sounds like I'm putting it on his coaches, but teaching someone to fight like that is an agreement. It's partly the coaches and it's partly Alex Caceres. He's got to say, I'm going to fight like that now that you've taught me to fight like that. So if Alex Caceres could use his range a bit, use the side kicks, use the front kicks, use the jab, those sort of things, he could build in the powerful attacks that he can use. When I was watching him versus Uriah Faber in preparation for this fight, I just couldn't get over the fact that everything he threw was like, I'm going to knock this guy out. Oh no, now I'm in a clinch, And to be fair, that's a lot of that is the ticking clock that's applied by the wrestler. The more clinches you get into, the more you start swinging for the fences because you're worried about the next clinch. So this fight overall was just lots and lots of spinning, lots of craziness and not, it was, I don't like saying it, but it was style over substance, you know. And Rodriguez's boxing game looked extremely, I mean, he was throwing a nice back fist sort of thing. He did the Anderson Silva crouch down and back fist the thigh, but then slap him across the face with like a hammer fist. That was cool. And he threw the occasional nice punch, but what would happen is he'd start these combinations from way too far out. He'd start with a spin, he'd miss because Alex Caceres stepped back every time that he began to turn his back, and then he'd run in with his head down like he was, you know, swimming front crawl, just hands above his head swinging, and then he'd end up in like a very loose clinch, or giving up his back, or giving up the underhooks. And those are things that, you know, even Uriah Faber or someone like that, you know, the old men of the division, if you do that against them, they will take advantage of that. You know, they might eat a couple of spinning things on the feet or a couple of good kicks, but as soon as you start running in on them, they're going to take those underhooks and say, thank you very much, and that's the rest of the round you're going to be spending underneath them. Or worse yet, you give your back to Uriah Faber and you're probably, you know, getting choked out. And I certainly don't want people to think that I'm just dumping all over spinning attacks in general or turning attacks. I'm a big proponent of those. I really enjoy that sort of stuff that's coming over from the point fighting styles and things like that. It's just that it has to be built on a fundamentally or tactically sound game. We can talk about guys like Stephen Thompson or Michael Page or, you know, even Andy Hugg or people like that who liked spinning attacks but built it onto a game that wasn't entirely focused on them. Or we can talk about a guy whose game is almost entirely focused on turning attacks in Raymond Daniels, who's terrific. He's the one who's just been playing in the background while I'm talking about this on the YouTube version of this podcast. What he does so wonderfully is that he uses his back kicks as a counter. He insists on getting the opponent stepping towards him before he throws his back kick, and he normally throws it with a little jump, the Chuck Norris tournament style one. You jump instead of standing on the pivoting leg, and you make sure that the opponent is moving their gut onto your heel, basically. And he's stopped so many guys like that. It's essentially the same thing as Machida does, and the same thing as David Tamer did whenever the Fight Night event over the weekend was. It's where you back up, and the opponent keeps stepping forwards, and they start taking what we like to call the extra step. They assume that you're going to be out of the way, so they're taking a step and then another step, and you catch them as they're taking that second step. You hit them as they're coming in, and you do the damage. And that's how Lyoto Machida generated his punching power, and that's how Raymond Daniels gets people walking onto his kicks. In fact, that's how Nate Corbett gets people walking onto his elbows. Nate Corbett, great Muay Thai fighter, great elbows, probably one of the best elbow-centric fighters I've ever seen. Tyrone Spong fought him for a world Muay Thai title and insisted that they didn't allow elbows in a Muay Thai fight, which was very strange. So that's how scary this guy's elbows are. And the way that he catches them is that he gets people stepping onto them, like you would with a counter jab, except instead of the jab, he steps all the way in, slashes their face right open with the elbow. So yeah, intercepting could be a good tactic for Yair Rodriguez, but that involves not sort of running at people and showing them that you're going to attack them long before you actually attack them. So turning to the rest of the evening, couple of good fights on there. Carriage Erie versus Swanson was a really fun one. I really enjoyed that. I've always been a huge Swanson mark, but Carriage Erie I'd sort of given up hope on a while ago. There was a while when he thought he was a really good striker, and he took a kickboxing match against Masato, and it was just disastrous. But they had a really good scrap. Kawajiri came out throwing the low kicks and the round kicks especially, and that seemed to put Swanson off. Swanson looked for the counter right hand down the middle of those kicks, landed a good one. Kawajiri is a really interesting fighter because once he's shot in and he's on his knees, clinging to either the hips or the leg, and all his momentum stopped, he's still very effective there. He's just an enormously strong dude. He looks for that hook around the near leg. My favourite finish to the double as someone who is crap at wrestling, but it's forgivable because I'm English. But the way Genki Sudo used to finish all his shots, the way you're taught to finish your shots in BJJ typically, rather than turning the corner or whatever it is, rather than cutting the corner, you hook the leg and you just sort of try and straighten it out as you drive onto it. And he got to that position against Swanson, and it looked like he'd got stuck, and Swanson was about to free his leg and get away. Kawajiri reached over, caught his other hand, caught Swanson's forearm in the clinch, and threw Swanson towards what would be 12 o'clock for Swanson. And what happened was Swanson had one hand free, the one that was supposed to be overhooking Carriage Erie's, overhooking on Carriage Erie so that Carriage Erie couldn't get to the back. And that hand went out in front of Swanson to catch him on the mat. And Carriage Erie started running to his back. It was a really cool little sequence. And then Swanson put his back to the mat to try and stop Carriage Erie from taking it, and started digging in his butterfly hooks from, what's it called? I think Keenan Cornelius called it pancake guard. It's not really a guard at all, it's just where you're trying to get hooks in from a really disadvantageous position. So that was really neat. Swanson's stand-ups in that fight were pretty cool. There was the bit along the fence, what I call laying it out, the old Johnny Hendricks, or Josh Thompson did it a lot. Mayhem Miller did it to Michael Bisping, His Fistic Majesty, blessed be his name. And it's where the opponent's sitting along the fence trying to walk up it, and you just use your legs to grapevine their legs out, straighten them flat, and you can't really do anything from it. Claudia Gadelha was holding it for ages against Joanna Champion. I'm not going to try and pronounce that now. And it wasn't achieving anything, and the commentators were saying, she's punching surprisingly hard from this position, but even then it's still just arm punches, and the harder you throw arm punches, the more energy you're using, so she very quickly gassed out in that fight. But Carriage Erie got that position on Swanson, and Swanson did a nice job of getting his head underneath Carriage Erie's, what we're always talking about from the standing clinch, and that enabled him to free up his butterfly hooks and get back to guard. And there was another one later on, where he looked to be like he was pushing off the cage in one direction with his legs, or with his right leg, and then changed direction after he'd broken Carriage Erie's balance, and it looked like he was going to do like a over the back arm bar, what Eddie Bravo calls the swim move, and instead he just kicked up to his knees and ran off. It was really cool. It was worth watching a few times. I had a few people mention that to me, and I really enjoyed it. Would have liked to see more of Swanson's very low kicks, because Carriage Erie does not check kicks. Would have liked to see less spinning from Carriage Erie. I like that he was kicking so much. He was annoying Swanson with those kicks, and he kicks really hard, because he's a big dude. But he was throwing the right straight into the spinning left back fist over and over and over again. Chael Sonnen showed about 80 times on the pads before the Anderson Silva fight. It was really if you're doing something unexpected, that's great. But if you're doing it several times, it's not unexpected anymore, and Swanson was just ducking under it or moving out of the way. He had no problems with it. Or, in fact, he caught him with a really nice uppercut while he was doing it at one point. And Carriage Erie actually showed the best bit of striking I think I've ever seen from him. He used to be obsessed with what a great kickboxer he thought he was, but he'd just throw hooks, and he could hit very hard, but he was so tense the entire time. It was like watching a powerlifter try and punch. It was very strange. But in this fight, he pumped a little double jab, and he threw the straightest right hand I've ever seen him throw, and he snapped Swanson's head around. And I thought, if you could get back to doing stuff like that more often, not only would that be something that Swanson had to worry about, but that would also set up the spinning stuff nicely, because he's worried about your orthodox game. So a really neat fight. I really enjoyed that one. And they did a decent job, given that they were at altitude, and fair play to the two old vets there. Teruto Ishihara definitely deserves a mention. I quite enjoyed his fight. Oh god, the shot though. Did you see the shot in that one? He sprinted at the guy and tried to grab his hips, and just the guy sprawled on him hard. And you're thinking, you train wrestling at Team Alpha Male, every day, don't you? But obviously, fighting off the great wrestlers is not quite the same as taking down the great wrestlers, I'm sure. It was just a very strange thing to do. But then he looked a lot sharper on the feet, really nice. Liked his kicks. And then he got clipped on one leg and started backing up. And it looked like he'd been hurt a little bit. And his man, what was his name? Gutierrez. Gutierrez started closing in on him with a combination. And I think he caught him with two of the punches, and then Ishihara started to move his head, and the other punches started missing. And it just made me think that if you're still conscious and you're getting hit, it's never too late to start moving your head, because if you can make one of 3 punches not connect, at least that's some time that you can do some thinking or get your head back in the game. And it was probably a split second from when he got hit to when he was moving his head to when he was launching his counter. And it was a backstepping punch, and the other guy wasn't leading with his chin too badly. I thought he was looking actually quite good, for a mid-carder. Without looking down on that, of course. I meant for a guy who's not the the cream of the crop, he was looking like a very good striker. And Ishihara planted him. He just smacked him on the chin with the left hand, set him to the mat, and that was all she wrote. It was a really impressive performance by him, and it's a shame that the Japanese fans aren't picking up on him, because he's doing quite well over here, and people seem to like him. Head kick from the heavyweights, Tibura, I think we'll go with. This is going to be a theme on my podcast, butchering names, versus Victor Pesta. Not anything special to write home about, really. It was just that Pesta had his right hand down by his nipple when Tibura threw the kick. Heavyweights at altitude again, they were just breathing hard by the midpoint of the first round. But a cool knockout nonetheless. And then David Tamer, he was probably my showstopper on that event. I thought he looked really sharp on the feet. He was doing a lot of circling, and what he was doing was octagon control, but if you considered octagon control in the way that people generally consider it, he was losing most of the fight, because he was the one moving backwards. Jason Novelli was controlling the centre of the octagon, or whatever it is they normally say. But what was happening was Novelli wasn't cutting the ring, he wasn't doing anything useful, he was just following Tamer. And Tamer would throw the odd left round kick, good hard one, looked like he'd been doing it a lot, he's a kickboxer, so he's been doing it his whole career. And what that did was, forced Novelli to brace with his right hand, and always be in position to check that. And of course, the more you are in the position to frame and deal with the kicks from the outside, the more open your centre line is, the slower you're going to be parrying the blows, the straight blows. So Novelli was following him, took a kick on the arms, kept following him, left down the centre, bam, he's on the floor. Tamer follows up, finishes. It was lovely. Brilliant control throughout that fight, I thought. Wasn't doing too much. He wasn't a very active striker, but clearly set it up very well. And then we had, what's her name, Marina Moroz? I forget her name. Setting the record for least accuracy on strikes against an opponent who she had, a foot of height and a foot of reach on, basically. That was very strange fight. Let's not even go into it. Just don't bother watching it. But I hope for better things from both of them in future. Right then, let's do some listener mail. Dear Jack, this is not really a technical question, but who do you think has an underrated chin? Ben Rothwell, right off the top of my head. He's been smashed in the head by Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, Mark Hunt, Cain Velasquez, and he's wobbled occasionally, but he does take the shots incredibly. I mean, even Roy Nelson, who we all reckon has an amazing chin, has been knocked out. But Rothwell's never been stopped with blows. That question was from Jerry. Any thoughts on how a Mighty Mouse Dominic Cruz rematch might play out? It's a strange one, because you have to remember that Mighty Mouse wasn't actually training I assume he was training fairly full time, but I believe he was keeping a job at the same time when they first fought, or something like that. His run through the bantamweight division was not that of professional full-time mixed martial artist. What I did enjoy from that first fight was Demetrius Johnson's ring cutting. That stepping right hook that he loves really worked well. Especially as Dominic Cruz loves to throw right hands while sidestepping out to the left or darting. Johnson would give ground and catch him with the right hook, changing into a southpaw stance as he did so, and then chase him to the fence. The problem Johnson has always had is that he's quite good as a ring cutter. As in MMA, he's a very good ring cutter. It's just that once he actually gets to the fence, he doesn't really have a game that benefits too much from cutting the ring and placing the opponent on the fence. You could see that against Ali Bagautinov, who has a habit of standing along the fence anyway. It's what I jokingly call the Dagestani backstep. Him and Rustam Kabalov, butcher that name again, they like to stand with their back foot almost on the fence, and then as soon as the opponent steps in, they shoot on them. And it's a very dangerous game, because a lot of guys like Anthony Pettis will force people to the fence just to make them think about ducking in on his hips and then throw like a flying knee or something. He did that a lot against Benson Henderson in their first match. I think he did it to Shane Roller as well. But what you saw in the first match between Cruz and Johnson was that Johnson was cutting the ring really well, but then once he got Cruz to a position which should have been advantageous to him, he was, along the fence, had double underhooks on Cruz, and Cruz was just able to throw him around by the whizzer, by the single overhook. Because the thing that we all forget about Dominic Cruz, because he uses his outstriking so much, is that he's a very, very good wrestler. So what you had was Johnson was getting the fight exactly to where he wanted to. He was having no trouble on the feet, pushing Dominic Cruz to the fence. And then once he was there, he couldn't do anything. I think certainly a rethink for Johnson is going to be necessary, because he had so much trouble even when he got the fight to his chosen position. Maybe trying to avoid the upright clinch or getting in on a low single or something like that. But even then, you're ending up on top of Dominic Cruz, who's great in scrambles. It's a tricky one, but I think that we are very lucky to have a flyweight division. I think that is where Mighty Mouse belongs. And I think everyone should be able to fight at their most comfortable weight. Obviously we can't give everyone, a weight class every 2 pounds or whatever, but watching Johnson having to fight gigantic men compared to him, it was impressive, but it's not really fair on him. You don't get to see the best that he can do. It's also worth noting that Johnson's original run at at bantamweight was really not that impressive. Let me just bring it up on the computer here. Yeah, when he guillotined Damasio Page, which is pretty good at the time. That's 2010. But as soon as he came into the UFC, he met Norifumi Yamamoto, Kid Yamamoto, who is he was royally crocked even by the time he came to the UFC. Him and Gomi, especially, were picked up by the UFC pretty much just to prevent Dream or World's what was the other one, Sengoku, just to prevent those Japanese promotions from having a Japanese star to sell tickets. You can see that now in the fact that Yamamoto wasn't dropped for age. In fact, I think he's still in the UFC. He's never won a fight in the UFC, but he's still in it. And then the fight after that was Johnson's fight with Miguel Torres, which many people felt that he didn't deserve to win, because Torres was doing wonderful work off of his back in that fight. And then you got the fight with Dominic Cruz. So 3 in the UFC as a bantamweight, really not that impressive. The names on that record and how the fights went. And that question was from Flammable Ewok. This one from Alan. Hi Jack, I've been loving your articles for a good... buttering me up. Okay, I'll skip that. My question is, what are some of your favourite fighter nicknames? Costa Zoo was the Thunder from Down Under, which is a fantastic nickname. Was it Juan Luis Castillo? The Hispanic causing panic? Just great. Jimmy Wild had a couple of really good ones. One was the Tylerstown Terror, which is just, beautiful alliteration on that. And his other nickname, because he was also called the Mighty Atom, because he was flyweight, tiny dude. And he was also called because of his incredible knockout ratio. He's one of the greatest punchers of all time, one of the greatest finishers of all time in boxing. He was also called the Ghost with the Hammer in his hand, which is a long nickname, but I think that perfectly sums up what you want to be as a fighter. There was that guy who got knocked out a lot, and his nickname was the Goat, after fainting goat. Ulysses Gomez, they called him Useless, which is a great nickname. Mamoru Yamaguchi, the Japanese guy with the afro. I think he was a strawweight. Might have been a flyweight. Yeah, but he he just had this amazing Japanese afro, and they called him the Fro. Simple but effective. The Last Emperor is always a good one, Fedor Emelianenko. I'll tell you what is not a good nickname though. Pitbull. I'm so sick of Pitbull. And there's the 2 brothers, the Pitbull brothers, and then there's Andrei Arlovsky, who keeps pitbulls or likes pitbulls or something like that, and Thiago Alves, and then Betchko Heyer apparently is also called the Pitbull and trains under the Pitbulls. So just think of some new nicknames down at that academy. Call her the Accountant, or the girl who made Ronda Rousey striking world class. One of my favourite ever was Alexis Arguello, the Nicaraguan knockout artist. One of the best boxers, in my opinion, of all time. He was a very gangly dude, and they used to call him El Flaco Explosivo, the explosive thin man. Just brilliant. Going on a bit off topic of fighting with this one, but there was a landscape architect called Capability Brown. And he was responsible for a lot of the landscapes in southern England today. he was brought in by rich families, and he would look around their grounds, and if he felt that he could do something with it, he'd go, it has capability. So he got the nickname Capability Brown, which was probably a good thing because his actual name was Lancelot. Let's go to Twitter for some more questions. What target do you feel is the most underutilized in MMA? And that's from Blake. Any sort of body shot is underused, but obviously the floating ribs is probably one of the most underrated targets in mixed martial arts. But of course, the floating ribs are only available if the opponent is attacking, if their elbows are away from their body. The kidneys, I would say. Kidney punching, obviously illegal in boxing. Not many opportunities for it in kickboxing or anything like that. But in mixed martial arts, when the opponent is in on a leg, their kidneys are wide open for the elbows. And if you watch Fifth Round Lawler, if you watch Robbie Lawler against Johnny Hendricks, and I think he did it to Josh Koscheck too, but definitely against Johnny Hendricks in one of their two fights, or both of them. Anytime Johnny Hendricks was laming it out on the single leg, Lawler would just start dropping elbows straight on his kidneys, and it looked absolutely brutal. They've just brought back heel kicks to the kidneys from the guard, so some people think that that's going to make guard play more interesting with fighters using the heel kicks to set up their triangle attempts and things like that, because obviously it's like a nutcracker technique. You know, if the opponent's all shelled up, you start kicking them in the kidney and they're going to have to do something about it. Other people think that it's going to make the guard very boring because guys will just kick the kidneys and not, advance their position or try to set up a submission or anything. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but, you're almost guaranteed some kidney kicks on whatever card you watch next because they're just there the whole time, anytime you're in closed guard. Question 1, please give us your honest review on the Suicide Squad movie. Question 2, does MMA really need to be in the Olympics? That's from Alex. I haven't actually seen the Suicide Squad movie, and if I had, I wouldn't want a petition to shut me down. Question 2, does MMA really need to be in the Olympics? No, it doesn't. Why? Why would it be in the Olympics? If you allowed professionals to compete, why would they? You'd get like a third rater from Brazil who couldn't quite make it onto the UFC cards or something like that. The UFC owns most of the talent in the world. Bellator owns the other, the remainder. Ryzen is finding some local talent, but, none of them want to put their athletes into a pot to get injured in an amateur event. There's no point. Unless, of course, it was amateurs only, and then, that's just, nobody really watches amateur MMA for a reason, because even the professional stuff isn't great at the low levels. I'll tell you what, it annoys me that it's just been added to the Olympics, karate. And as a guy who's been doing karate his whole life, I just could not care less. We already have taekwondo, that's a form of point sparring. Karate is just point sparring with the hands and some throws in. Why not just make a point sparring event, and then all the taekwondo people and all the karate people and all the, hapkido people or whatever can spar together. Why is the straight kick, side kick to the leg, knee still legal? Do we have to wait for a gruesome injury before the rule change? That's from Shingo. Well, there hasn't been a gruesome injury yet. I mean, there was an injury to Quinton Jackson's knee. Like, he very obviously got hurt by John Jones with a kick to the knee, and had some knee difficulties after that. But equally, it's a fight. You can kick dudes in the arm and snap their forearm in half, and we have to deal with it. The onus is on the man who is getting kicked to deal with the kicks. You saw Holly Holmes' low-line straight kicks completely diffused by Valentina Shevchenko the other week. So it's possible. The thing is that whenever something comes along and it's new in mixed martial arts, we all go, well, it's working, and can we not just ban it? And no, the onus is on the people who are getting kicked to fix it. If you had to advise a young high-level Nakmoy who wants to transition to MMA, which camp would you send him to and why? That's a good one. Maybe somewhere with heaps of wrestlers, like Team Alpha Male or American Kickboxing Academy, American Top Team. There's tons out there, or even like Nobu Unao. They've got terrific takedown defense, all of them. So, assuming that the Nakmoy isn't going to be trying to take people down or wanting to take people down, just send him to Nobu Unao. I'm saying that name terribly, but you know the one I mean, Andre Pederneiras' camp. Send them to Andre Pederneiras and see if they can learn to defend the takedowns, because that's what they'll be working on the whole time. The only high-level Nak Muay who crossed over and had real success was Ramba Somdet, who was probably the best strawweight in MMA to date. Ironically, he was known for his guard game. It was a really interesting way he played the guard, feet on the hips, always controlling one hand, and then striking from there. It was very interesting. Go look him up if you can. Right, let's talk about some more UFC 202 stuff. Donald Cerrone versus Rick Story. This is one I'm really looking forward to, actually. This is a great test for Cerrone at welterweight, and this is also just another chance for a step up the ladder for Story, who is the greatest spoiler in MMA today, I reckon. He keeps being matched up against like hot prospects, and he keeps making them look very normal. Donald Cerrone is partway through a very interesting and storied career. No pun intended. But he began in the lightweight division. He came into the UFC with the purchase of the WEC. And back then he was all about the low kicks and running into the low kicks. If he could get his opponent backing up, he would chop away at that lead leg as they left his range. The trailing leg, the last thing to leave his range, he would just punt that, and he'd do it for days. So anytime a guy backed up, like Jeremy Stevens is probably the perfect fight for looking at, like, young Cerrone sort of ideal fight. Any opponent who gave ground, he would just murder. You know, he'd just punt their leg out, and any opponent who fell for his feints and things, he could just get to work on them like a blank canvas. It was beautiful. What Cerrone always had trouble with was people stepping in on him, because he had that tremendous height and length for his division, the lightweight division, but it was a double-edged sword when he got into punching exchanges. You'll remember he was hurt almost immediately against Melvin Gillard in a very quick fight that he quickly finished. But the perfect example is Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is quite a gangly dude at lightweight too, but he was still a little bit shorter in limb length and height than Donald Cerrone. It seemed in the fight, at least. But he's mainly a puncher, and Donald Cerrone was mainly a kicker. But when Nate Diaz got in on the inside and close enough to punch, Donald Cerrone would just start throwing back. And he throws these punches that, they're not really straights, they're more arcing punches. His elbows come out a lot, and it just means that there's all that space inside of them for a fighter who punches very straight, like Nate, to just shoot straight down the middle. So against Nate Diaz, he got busted up in the first round, and in the second round, I think I can't really remember the fight all that well, but in the third round, he did a lot better, just chopping away at Diaz's usual vulnerable lead leg. But that was sort of Cerrone's big problem, the pressure and getting drawn into brawls. One thing that Cerrone did after his loss to Anthony Pettis to counter the shorter guys getting close to him and getting inside his wide elbows was to master the intercepting knee. Around the time of the Evan Dunham fight, I think that was just sort of coming in, and basically any time an opponent stepped in on him, he'd lift his knee up, catch him in the gut, and they really wouldn't want to do it again. If you watch him against Jim Miller hated that, and Eddie Alvarez suffered the same sort of thing. He also threw some intercepting kicks. He'd use his lead leg to catch under Eddie Alvarez's right arm. When Eddie Alvarez stepped in to throw his right hand, Cerrone would bring that left leg up and catch him right in the exposed ribs where his elbow had left his side. That's a favourite of Badr Hari, a really nice technique. You don't need a lot of power on it. You don't even need to switch, really. You bring the leg straight up, and if you catch him with the arm out, you've got a great chance of hurting or even breaking something. Perhaps the most interesting thing where these guys match up is in the body shots, because Rick Story has some of the nicest body shots in MMA, or nastiest, depending if you're taking them or watching them. Yeah, he used them against Thiago Alves, Brock Jardine, people like that, and they really told against Gunnar Nelson, because Gunnar Nelson is a very movement-based style. He's got a point karate style. And the ways you can really mess with that are to kick the trailing leg as they leave range, or to pound the body when they get close enough. So anytime they were close enough to clinch, Story would just be banging away at the drum, and it really told on Nelson in the later rounds. He only got the split decision in that one. I remember watching it and thinking that he was really taking Nelson to town. And he's just come back from, he fought Nelson in October 2014, and he's just come back May 29th, 2016, against Tarek Safieddine, who is obviously no joke. Got the unanimous decision there, but that's a long time off, so he's had a rough career, and he's had these intermittent losses too, he, had a great streak of wins coming into the UFC, including beating Johnny Hendricks, and Thiago Alves back to back, and then he lost to Charlie Brenneman, which is an interesting one. And then Martin Kampmann got the split decision there, decision loss. Beat Brock Jardine, got neck cranked by Damian Maia, we all remember that. The lemon juicer head crank. Then he beat Quinn Mulhern, and then he lost to Mike Pyle, then he beat Brian Ebersol, lost to Kelvin Gastelum. So he was really up and down for a very long time. That was right up till 2014. And then he's managed to get 3 on the trot, even if there was a almost 2-year break between the most recent 2. But if you watch Story, he's a really interesting fighter. He's great in the clinch. He's great at mauling people. He's quite good at cutting the ring, actually. And those are going to be important strategies against Cerrone. Because if there's one thing Cerrone hates, it's 1, pressure, and 2, getting hit in the body. And this one is one that always produces a lot of speculation online. Because he and Matt Brown are the ones that people are like, why do they get dropped by a body shot so often? And a glass body, I suppose, is a thing. They used to say that Manny Pacquiao had it before he got a new conditioning trainer and did a ridiculous amount of ab work every day. But Donald Cerrone obviously lost a portion of his gut in some kind of accident. And a lot of people suspect that that's why he has such trouble taking body shots nowadays. And Matt Brown did a lot of damage to himself with drug use, and some people think that that's affected either his liver or some other thing that gets punched, and he can't take the body shots as well. I saw someone the other day online saying that they reckoned ripped fighters didn't get hurt as often by body shots as chubby fighters. And this is an interesting one, because like anything in boxing, this is sort of a part old wives' tale, part observation. It's like all the stuff about the chin. But the theory in boxing used to be that if you carried a bit more fat around your midsection, that could absorb the punches. Tommy Hearns, when he fought Ray Leonard, Leonard's corner under Angelo Dundee, they wanted to work the body because they figured that Tommy Hearns had such a low body fat percentage, because he was a huge guy for that division. They figured that because his midsection was so shredded and he had so little fat on it, he wouldn't be able to take the body blows. And they did take a toll on him throughout the fight. But it's a strange thing. I think anyone, if they get hit at the right time in the body, because we all breathe in and out on rhythm, and we all extend our elbows away from ourselves when we're attacking. So if you get hit while you're breathing in, or as you're extending to attack someone, good chance you're going to get hurt, or a better chance you're going to get hurt than if you're just getting hit, when you're standing still or whatever. An interesting thing about the Donald Cerrone body shot stuff is that he has gone up to welterweight, so he will be carrying a little bit more weight around his midsection. He'll be a bit more hydrated, hopefully a little bit healthier. If this fight goes past the first round, it's a Rick Story fight, so you will see him get hit in the body, and it will hopefully tell us something about how he's going to handle those at this weight. I really enjoyed Cerrone's fight against Cote. He looked tremendous in that. His hands looked better than I'd seen them ever before. In fact, the left hook that he hurt Cerrone with, which Cerrone hurt Patrick Cote with at the end, was it was sort of a throwaway punch. It was the sort of thing that he used to use to get offline and just set up the low kicks. But he turned Cote's head right around with it. So he's got a bit more mass to throw around at that weight, and I think it might work out for him well in the long term. Also, when he was fighting Cote, it seemed like they were both more at a range that was comfortable for Cerrone, as opposed to when he was fighting the stockier guys, and he was having to keep them out at distance, and he didn't really have the tools or understanding of the distance fighting game to keep them out there. He started adding things like elbows and stiff arms and things like that, but for a very long time he struggled to keep people off of him. Whereas against Cote, they were both fighting at their comfortable range, and he was just winning with variety and skill. In terms of ideal game plans, I think from Story, what you'd want to see is a good deal of, because obviously he's going to have to get in and use the clinch because he's not a particularly strong kicker, and you don't want to be standing out trading kicks with Donald Cerrone. So what you want to see is him get on the inside and take the fight longer and work the body. But in order to do that, he's got to mitigate that threat of the intercepting knee. So a lot of feints is what you'd want to see from Story. Because, if after you've pumped a few feints in a fighter's face, if he's picking his knee up every time, he doesn't really like doing that every single time. So you throw a few feints, get him off his rhythm, get the finger off the trigger a little bit, and then start stepping in on him. And dragging the fight late. I'd love to see, Story try and incorporate the stuff that Jones uses, John Jones uses so well along the fence. Get the head underneath the opponents, stand them up straight, pound the body with both hands, or one hand if you can get it free, like Cain Velasquez. Fabio Maldonado, his most successful work came along the fence when he freed both his hands with his head underneath his opponents. Except the Fedor fight, obviously, because that was, oh god, let's not even talk about that. That was awful. So yeah, that would be a very powerful position for Story, I feel. While I said don't trade leg kicks with Donald Cerrone, it would be in Story's interest to throw some low kicks, because anytime you can get the opponent picking up their legs, that stops them moving and that stops them running from the clinch. Meanwhile, from Cerrone's end, I think I'd love to see more of the straight kicks. He used a wonderful snap kick to the midsection against Jim Miller, which just looked absolutely brutal. And I don't think I see him use it that much, but I would love to see him use it more. And that's sort of a proactive range keeper as opposed to a reactive punishment for the opponent closing range. Intercepting elbows would also be useful, because Story does have a tendency to sort of wade in with his head on center. He's not very pretty defensively. He's sound, but he's not he's not going to be moving his head the entire time. He's a presence. When he's coming at you, he's there to be hit, even though, there is the risk that you hit him and then he's going to be on top of you hitting you back. So it's a 3-rounder. I said Story should probably try and drag it late. I forgot that we're talking about a 3-rounder. So I taking it to the decision can't hurt, but just trying to wilt Cerrone over time would be in his favour. For Cerrone, I think probably the quicker that he can get this done, the better, because Story is so good at making good fighters look very average. And it's in the interest of Cerrone's career if he looks amazing here, if he gets him out of there quickly, as opposed to getting caught in clinches and being in a boring fight, because Donald Cerrone isn't known for boring fights, and it's a big part of his brand, and why the UFC is so keen to bring him in all the time, that he's exciting and he'll step up and he'll fight anyone and it'll be a barn burner. Should be a really good one. I'm really looking forward to this. Story is still quite a question mark for me, because while I was so excited when he was duffing up Gunnar Nelson years ago, it has been the best part of 2 years since we've seen him, and then we've only seen him once against Safadine. So that's a bit of an unknown. And then equally Cerrone, we've only seen him one fight at welterweight, so he's also an unknown. It's a good one. I love fights with tons of questions attached, as opposed to the main event, which is a fight with almost no questions attached, because it's at a weird weight, so whoever loses, we can be like, whatever. So that'll be exciting. I reckon that about wraps us up here. I'm Jack Slack. This has been the Fights Gone By podcast, week 2. Hope you've had a great week, and I'll see you next time.